All right, everybody, this is Emar Supper 2. Welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Blitz. We're going to recap all of the action from week 2 in the NFL. As always, if you want to follow everything that we do, head to the mothership to sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. You can also go to our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the Sports Inquirer. Make sure you go on there. We live tweet a lot of contests during the NFL season, so make sure that you keep up with what we have going on there. And then finally, subscribe to us on our audio and video host, such as SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. Do a search for us there under the Sports Inquirer. You'll be able to find everything that we have going on, and that'll be a great way to keep track of all of our activities. Okay, we're recording this on September 21st, 2021, week 2 of the NFL season just concluded with the victory by the Green Bay Packers over the Detroit Lions. Aaron Rodgers, 4 touchdown passes. Aaron Jones, a big day out of backfield for the Packers. You knew that they would come back and get a victory after losing that first week to New Orleans in Jacksonville. A lot of issues. Now, last week's show, I took Aaron Rodgers to task a little bit about not coming into the regular season mentally focused and prepared. He had one of his worst performances as a starter for Green Bay in that first week. Remember, 2 interceptions. Just did not look very good in that contest. Well, last night he looked like the Aaron Rodgers of old. 4 TD passes, a tremendous throw on a third down late in the second half. Detroit was up, I think 17-14. Aaron Rodgers on fourth and long, big pass to down the sideline to Devonta Adams. Then had a few plays later, a big pass between several defenders to the tight end for a touchdown. A nice 25, 30-yard strike down the middle. Only he and maybe Mahomes can make that throw, put them in those spots with that strength and accuracy. And from there, they continue to roll and get the victory. So Green Bay, they find themselves in a good position. They're going to win that division. We'll go over the rest of the NFC North and how uninspired you really are by the rest of that division. But that was a win that they really needed, and it gave them their first victory of the season. I have a good stat about that in a moment. But right now, we actually have, well, I'll say it right now. There are 24 teams in the NFL right now with at least one win through the first week of this season. And the 7 teams are undefeated so far. You have Arizona, Carolina, Denver, the Las Vegas Raiders. I keep wanting to say the Oakland Raiders, old school that I am, but it's the Las Vegas Raiders, the Los Angeles Rams, San Francisco 49ers, and the Tampa Bucs. So those teams are undefeated so far this year. And I bring up Green Bay because at least 25 teams have at least one win through the first 2 weeks of the season, which is the second most ever, trailing only the 2012 season, which had 26 teams with at least one victory. The only winless teams you can count them on 2 hands. Really, if you and I can probably go through it right now. I know the Giants. I'm a Giants supporter. I'm from New York originally. Not too good right now for New York, but they're winless so far this year. You have the Falcons, and we cover the Falcons. We're here in Metro Atlanta. So the 2 teams that I keep up with probably the most are the 2 teams without a win so far this season. So this is a not a good situation for me as a football follower, but it's okay. I've kind of turned in my fandom hat years ago, try to be more objective. I am more objective about things, but those 2 teams are winless this year. Detroit's winless. We saw them last night. You just go down the list of there's only a handful of teams that do not have a victory so far this year. And we'll go over some of those as we progress through our week 2 recap. 11 of the 16 games this week, though, 68% of them they were within one score in the fourth quarter. And 7 of those games were decided by 3 or fewer points. This is where you're starting to see the parity in the league. There's some really good teams, like Tampa, obviously, is come out really strong so far this year. You look at the NFC West, you can say San Francisco's looked really good, things like that. And Arizona has been a really solid team. And then you have the really bad teams, like as I mentioned, Jacksonville. They're winless so far this year as well. It's gonna be a rough year for them. I think the Falcons and the Giants, they may win a game or two this year. I mean, they won't go 2-15. I got to get my stats right. I used to say 2-14, but they won't go 2-15, but they're not going to be in the playoffs most likely. So you have, but they're going to be some bad teams like Detroit. They're not going to be too good this year. But right down the middle, there's a lot of parity. I mean, I know that I said before the season, I thought Tampa was the pretty overwhelming favorite to win the NFC. I have Green Bay going to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, but you could say maybe Green Bay and Tampa were really elite teams in the NFC, and then the AFC, Kansas City and Buffalo, the championship games from last year, the conference championship games. Those four teams you would say are pretty strong, and then everyone else is kind of in the middle, and we're starting to see that I think more. And we'll go into that a little bit more as we go over this past week. I'll elaborate on those specific teams as we get to them. But three teams did overcome deficits of at least 10 points to win their week 2 games. Arizona was down 13 and defeated Minnesota by 1. Baltimore was down 11 points, and that was 11 points in the second half, and were able to defeat Kansas City by a point. And then Tennessee, 15 points they were down and 14 points in the fourth quarter, and still were able to win that game in Seattle 33-30 by 3 points. So those teams came back from some major deficits and found a way to get a victory. And so far this year, and I think this will be a theme throughout, we're looking at these rookie quarterbacks and what their impact is going to be on the league. 6 of them so far have attempted a pass this season. David Mills, he's a local Atlanta product. I remember covering him at Greater Atlanta Christian back in the day when I was doing high school sports. He threw a pass for Houston this year. So now 6 guys, rookies, have thrown passes this year, tying the 1971 season for the most rookies to attempt a pass through the first 2 weeks of the season. So while you still have some older guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady still in the league, playing at elite level, and then you kind of have the in-between guys like Russell Wilson, and kind of 7-8 year pros. You have a lot of the younger guys that are starting to get a lot of run. So it's been very interesting to see that so far. All right, let's start with that Baltimore contest. They defeated Kansas City 36-35. I thought those Lamar Jackson's, maybe statistically, he did go for a double triple to take a turn from basketball, more than 100 yards rushing, along with I think more than 200 yards passing. But looking at the circumstances, never defeating Kansas City in his career, especially with Mahomes on the other end, those two are kind of forever linked. They're going to be linked the rest of their careers, both for MVPs in the regular season. Mahomes has the Super Bowl MVP as well as the Super Bowl championship. Lamar Jackson is still trying to get that that playoff win. A lot of things going on there. But I thought he had his best performance of his career. And the thing is with him and Mahomes, they played very well. Kansas City put up 35 points. He made some elite throws. Travis Kelce had a highlight reel touchdown reception as well, going 50, 60 yards, eluding so many defenders. He's a video game. Tight ends should not be able to do that at his size and his have that speed. But Kansas City's defense really worries you. They struggled against Cleveland in the season opener, gave up 36 points to Baltimore, a team that you knew was not going to really run the ball, well, at least with their running backs. But then they still gave up so many points. And Lamar Jackson, he's a special guy. It's done differently. It's not the traditional way we want to see things as far as our quarterbacks, where you stay in the pocket, you throw the ball, and do things that way. You have to accept Lamar for who he is. And I'm trying to come around to it. I still worry about him lasting an entire season. They say he doesn't get hurt, which is he hasn't missed game time, and which is credit to him. He keeps his body right and he knows how to take hits. But when you run the ball so much, guys get hurt in the pocket. I mean, we've seen Tom Brady. He tore his ACL taking a hit when he was in New England, taking a hit from the Kansas City defender. It was Pollard throwing a ball. Aaron Rodgers, we saw him. Now, he was doing a rollout and threw the ball. He was tackled by a Minnesota defender. I do not remember his name, but he was tackled on the ground, broke his collarbone. So it can happen many ways. A quarterback gets hurt. We just saw Carson Wentz, who we'll get to in a moment when we go to over the Indianapolis game. sprained both his ankles and hurt his leg just taking hits, just basic hits. So that's going to happen for everybody. But with Lamar, the ball's in his hands so much. I just worry about his longevity, and it's not necessarily him getting a catastrophic injury and being out. No one wants to see that. It's more about these body blows, taking these hits throughout the year. So by the time you get to week 16, week 17, into the playoffs, is he physically fatigued and not able to perform at this level? We saw him play really great against Kansas City, but we're in week 2. What happens when you get towards later on in the season? You worry about that. But he's a special talent. And as I said, he may not be my first draft pick as far as a quarterback goes. If you had a fantasy league and you just pick one quarterback in the league, he may not be it, but he'd be in the conversation. He's just a special talent, and they really needed that win. He needed that win to beat Kansas City, not only for his mental makeup, but just for the overall morale of the team and also in the standings. You want to get these victories as many ways as you can. You don't want to go be 0-2 to start the season. Remember, they lost last week or the first week of the season at Las Vegas. Speaking of the Raiders, they're 2-0 on the season. One of the surprise teams, because you figured they're open the season at home against Baltimore, then have to go to Pittsburgh the next week, short week, played Monday night, then played the early game on the next Sunday. You figured they'd split that, maybe lose both those games. No, the Raiders are 2-0 so far this year. And Derek Carr, who has been much maligned, I think not necessarily by the fan base, but by his own head coach, John Gruden, who always seems to have his eye on the next quarterback. If you got to go back to his career, well, Oakland, he ran through quarterbacks. He ran through quarterbacks in Tampa. The two best quarterbacks that played for him were kind of by default. You look at Rich Gannon, he was kind of already there. He was a journeyman. Gruden got him. He became an MVP. But that was kind of like, well, Gannon's here. We got to play him and stick with him, and they worked it out. Then you look at in Tampa with Brad Johnson. Johnson was another guy who been around the league. He was kind of there. I was like, all right, I have to work with him. You just go down the list of all the quarterbacks he's tried to bring in over the years, from Chris Sims at Tampa and throughout his time there. Even while he's been with Las Vegas / Oakland his second time there. Marcus Mariota, he brought him in, and it's like, okay, maybe he'll replace Carr. Tom Brady, when he was a free agent, he was courted by Oakland or courted by the Raiders. Aaron Rodgers, he was looked at as a possible trade situation for the Raiders. Russell Wilson this past offseason had the rumors of where he may go. And the Raiders, I think, were one of the 4 teams on his list, along with, I think, the Giants, Chicago, and Dallas, New Orleans. The Raiders were in the running for that. So he's always seemed like Gruden has never been happy with a quarterback. And Derek Carr he was already there when he took the job. He didn't draft Carr. He didn't select him and groom him. But it's really working out right now for the Raiders. Carr threw for 382 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, QB rating of 126.2 in that victory. 5th quarterback in the Super Bowl era with at least 375 passing yards and 2 TDs in each of the first 2 games of the season. He joins Drew Bledsoe, Tom Brady, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Pat Mahomes on that list. And this is a really good start for the Raiders, because if you look at that division, the Chargers are going to be a solid team. I know they lost to Dallas, but they're going to be a team that can win 8-9 games. Denver's, I think, is not as good as 2-0, but you got to look at the record. They're undefeated so far this year. They're not going to be an easy out. And Kansas City, I think, is still the class of that division. But you have to look at it for the Raiders. You bank these wins, they put themselves in double-digit wins, and that could put you in the playoffs. So that was a very good win by the Raiders to get that win. I think Pittsburgh, obviously TJ Watt with I think it was the groin. Yeah, typical injury for a guy who missed all of training camp, and I think he didn't even do the mini camps. And he stepped on the field 2 weeks ago in the season opener against Buffalo without training camp, got 2 sacks, and he got paid. He's the richest defensive player ever, whatever the metrics are, but he's right up there. But you still need training camp. You still need to be in condition. And I'm not saying he's out of shape, but having a soft tissue injury like a groin, when you haven't done a training camp, that's not a surprise at all. We'll see how effective he is for the next few weeks because those type of injuries, you think you're good, but then you got to sit out, and then it's very easy to re-aggravate it. So that's a concern for Pittsburgh. Tennessee, very nice win at Seattle, 33-30, got the last second field goal to secure the victory. Derrick Henry, 237 scrimmage yards in the contest and 3 rushing TDs. He is the 4th NFL player to have at least 10 career games with at least 150 rushing yards and 2 TDs. The other guys on that list are Jim Brown, LaDainian Tomlinson, and Barry Sanders. Maybe 3 of the top 10, 15 running backs of all time. Some would say Barry's the best of all time. Some would say Jim Brown. So to put yourself on that list is really amazing statistic. Julio Jones, 59th career game with at least 100 receiving yards, ties Marvin Harrison for the 3rd most of all time. Only other guys to have that mark are Jerry Rice, who has 76 games of 100 receiving yards, which is ridiculous, and Randy Moss has 64 of them. So he's in Hall of Fame category is Julio Jones, with that. So that was just a big moment for the Titans, though, to go on the road and get that victory down double digits, as we mentioned earlier. They have to keep pace in that division. And that's a very big victory for them coming back from losing that first week at home to Arizona. Oh, yeah, one more note on Julio Jones, 13,053 receiving yards through 137 career games. Fastest player to reach 13,000 receiving yards in a career. Jerry Rice did it in 154 games. So he is on a Hall of Fame track and Hall of Fame pace, for that team. So that's a big win for Tennessee as things get rolling. Dallas was able to defeat the LA Chargers 20-17. Big thing for the Cowboys, 180 rushing yards. We see Dak Prescott, know he's the highest paid quarterback in the league right now. It was good what he did against Tampa, but with throwing so many yards, but they need balance on that offensive attack. So getting whether it's Pollard or Ezekiel Elliott, however to get the rushing yards is very important. And getting those rushing yards was very big for them. And I still think that they're the class of the division. And I think they still can win that division pretty handily, but you couldn't go 0-2 and starting the season on the road against Tampa to start the year. We saw that close loss. Getting that win over the Chargers was a big moment for them. Justin Herbert, 338 passing yards in the loss, 10th career game with at least 300 passing yards. And he ties Patrick Mahomes and Dan Marino for the most 300-yard passing games through the first 2 seasons in the NFL. And Herbert still has 15 more games to go. I think he's going to reach that mark again. Puts up a lot of big numbers, big moment for him. Speaking of big numbers, Tom Brady, what more can you say about him? All these career statistics that I like to spew on this show, it's getting insane right now. 5 touchdown passes in that victory over the Falcons. Tampa won the game 48-25. Gronkowski, 2 receptions for a touchdown in that contest. So Brady now has 35 career games with at least 4 touchdown passes. Ties Peyton Manning for the 2nd most all time, with they each have 35. Drew Brees has 37 of those games. Brady knows his numbers. He's going to try to break that mark. And he might have that opportunity by default. Just the way the team flows and the way the team operates. Yeah, I mean, you just look at Brady and his numbers, and as I mentioned, the 35 career games with at least 4 touchdown passes. You look at his having 5th quarterback NFL history with at least 4 TD passes through the first 2 games of a season. It's just putting all these superlatives together for him. Dating back to Week 16 of the 2020 season, he has 4 consecutive games with at least 4 touchdown passes. Ties with Dan Marino for that mark. Only Peyton Manning had 5 consecutive games with 4 TD passes in 2004. Gronkowski, 19 career games, or at least 2 TD passes. And he is now tied with Tony Gonzalez with 18 games actually surpassed Tony Gonzalez for the most career regular season games, at least two TD passes for a tight end. Antonio Gates has 21 of those. Gronk has that in his mind and everything like that. You just go over all these numbers and you're looking at probably the greatest tight end and quarterback in history of the game, and they're playing together under these circumstances is something that you may not ever see again. But that contest was actually relatively close into the third quarter, but two pick sixes by Matt Ryan passes by Mike Edwards, who returned both of them for touchdowns. That really eliminating any hope for the Falcons. And including the postseason, Tampa has scored 30 points and won each of its past 9 games, which is the most in NFL history. So just so many big numbers, for the Bucs as they continue to roll through the season. Arizona defeated Minnesota 34-33. Greg Joseph, who made several big kicks in that contest, was including a 52-yarder, I believe, in that contest, was unable to kick the relatively easy field goal at the end of regulation. It went wide, and Arizona emerged with the victory. Kyler Murray, a guy that I've been not down on, but skeptical of, I'll put it that way. He's had a really amazing start to the regular season so far. Past 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, which you don't like to see, but still made it up with a rushing TD. So 4 total touchdowns in that victory for Arizona. So he had four touchdown passes and 1 rushing TD in the first week of the season, and he's the first player in NFL history with at least 3 throwing passes for touchdowns and 1 rushing TD in the first 2 games of a season. And he's now has 12 career games with at least a passing and rushing TD, surpassing the great Steve Grogan, who did that 11 times in his career. Only other guys ahead of him as far as that passing and rushing TDs in the same game, Cam Newton, Josh Allen, and Dak Prescott. So he has played at a really high level to start the season. San Francisco defeated Philadelphia 17-11. No Trey Lance appearance in this contest. Smart move. If you're going to stick with Garoppolo, it looks like they're doing that to start the season. You need to just play him and not have a package for Trey Lance and try to do all that stuff. Just stick with Garoppolo. And I think San Francisco, you got to give them credit. 2 road wins to start the season. Granted, it's Detroit and Philadelphia, 2 teams that may not finish winning records this season, but still to go on the road and get those victories is very impressive. And I think Philadelphia, they have good line play on both ends, offensively and defensive lines. I think they'll be okay, and they'll contend for that division title in the NFC East. But you saw that Hurts did so much of that damage in week 1 against Atlanta. That defense is not very good that he was facing, but still, I think that in that division, and he had his struggles against San Francisco. I think he had an interception, didn't have a TD pass. He's going to be a solid quarterback for them this year. But yeah, you have to keep an eye on that in Philadelphia. Denver defeated Jacksonville 23-13. The Broncos are 2-0 this season. Defeated the Giants and the Jaguars, not really strong teams, but if you go on the road and win in the NFL, you got to take it. Jacksonville, they're not going to have a very good year. I said that from the beginning of the year. And I don't know if Urban Meyer is necessarily going to take the USC job, but I just don't see it working out in Jacksonville for him. His personality, the way he approaches things, even from the players not liking his collegiate approach, him blowing off the media session with the beat writers before this contest, something that no other NFL coach has ever done, I don't think, in history of it. Now, they may not be happy to do that presser with the opposing media. Typically, the way it works is that the say, okay, the Broncos are playing the Jaguars. Usually around Tuesday or Wednesday before the game, that player or that coach for the opposing team for the Denver media, for Urban Meyer, makes himself available to that media. And it's usually done when I was going up to cover the Falcons more consistently, it was the conference call. So you're literally sitting around a phone and you're asking questions to the opposing coach, and you're doing it that way. Or they may do Zoom now. I don't know. And it's usually not more than 5 or 10 minutes, but it's done by all of the media members. It's done by all the coaches and all the media members. And trust me, coaches don't aren't happy to do it, but they still do it. Urban Meyer is the first coach that I've heard of that just completely blew it off and didn't do it. Typical Urban Meyer, I'm better than everybody else attitude. If Bill Belichick and Andy Reid and John Harbaugh and all of these great coaches in the NFL, the Mike Tomlins, can make their time available to do these type of deals, Urban Meyer can do the same, but he thinks he's above everybody, and I think that's going to come back to haunt him. I think the X's and O's are going to haunt him there as well. I just don't think that the college game is very different than the program. I know there's some crossovers, and you're starting to see some college coaches do okay in the NFL. Cliff Kingsbury at Arizona, Matt Rule with the Panthers, excuse me, in Carolina, they're doing well. I just think Urban Meyer. I just crossing paths with him in the past, seeing how he operates. I don't know, but we'll see what happens there. Carolina. Speaking of Matt Rule, they defeated the Panthers. Defeated the New Orleans Saints 26-7. I don't think Carolina is this good and New Orleans is this bad, but it was kind of a reality for both checks for both teams. I think for Carolina, they may have their quarterback in Sam Darnold, but more importantly, they have their running back in Christian McCaffrey. He had another solid effort for the team, catching the ball and running it. When he's healthy and available, that's a pretty okay offense that can put up some points. I think New Orleans, they weren't going to play as well as they did against Green Bay in the opening week. Jameis Winston, 5 touchdown passes, no interceptions. That's not going to be every week for Winston, let alone for Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Definitely not for Winston. But I think that they can still be a solid team. They need to get healthy. Lattimore not being available at cornerback's a problem. But I think that they can still navigate their way. I didn't have them as a playoff team before the season started, but I think they can still find their way into the playoff picture. Buffalo defeated Miami 35-0. The Bills are my Super Bowl champions, as far as that's what I'm predicting. That was a good second week for them to get a victory there. I remember last week or the first week of the season, they lost to Pittsburgh at home. And Miami, Tua's hurt again I guess he has a rib injury now. He's just going to be one of those guys, kind of like Carson Wentz, that they're just not going to be able to play healthy for an entire season. Sometimes it's bad luck. Sometimes it's just the way their bodies are built. But I just don't see him being healthy consistently. And that's why you see the clamoring for Deshaun Watson to be traded from Houston to Miami. I just don't think they trust him as a quarterback. He got injured in college. You saw he was banged up all through college. He had the hip injury, but covering college athletics like we do, it was always something with him, whether it was the hand or shoulder. He just gets banged up a lot. He plays and he gives effort when he's out there, but it's just the way things work out. Chicago defeated Cincinnati 30-17 or 20-17. Just played Justin Fields, Chicago. Andy Dalton tweaked his knee. I don't think it's as bad as Ryan Fitzpatrick when I said he's going to retire with hip injury, but he's not going to be able to. Dalton's not going to come back next week and play. Even if he's healthy, just play Justin Fields. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to throw interceptions. We're seeing that with the Jets right now with Zach Wilson. Play these guys. Let them play, go through the growing pains, and Chicago will be all right. Cleveland defeated Houston 31-21. Good win for the Browns after losing the opening week of the season to the Chiefs. Yeah, Odell Beckham did not play again. I'll play this week. He hasn't played so far this season. It's a knee injury. Got to be careful with that. We've seen Saquon Barkley, him coming back for a knee injury. He's not 100% right. You got to work your way through it. But I just hope it's not a career-altering injury for him because he's a special talent, and you want to see the great players out there. And I think if he comes back, even if it's mid-season or towards the end of the year, he's going to be a solid contributor for them. But the Browns, they run the ball with Chubb and Hunt. If Baker Mayfield does not turn the ball over, they're going to be they're winning the division, at least in my predictions. I'm sticking with that. But that was a good win for them in Houston. Yeah, now Tyrod Taylor, he's hurt. You saw, as I mentioned, David Mills, he got to play some time. I don't know what's going on with Houston. I just say play Watson, and the league hasn't suspended him. So I don't know what's going on there. It's a mess. The Rams defeated the Colts 27-24. Matthew Stafford, another win for him. Rams going to put up some good numbers. They're going to have a really good year. The Colts, as I mentioned, Wentz hurt again. Jacob Eason comes in. He turns the ball over. Not good times for the Colts. I don't know what's going on there. And then Washington defeated the Giants 30-29. Both those teams, if they have winning records by the end of the year, I'd be very surprised. But we'll see what happens. I did a recap of that game in our last Gridiron Blitz, so make sure you check that out. And that concludes this edition of the show. Thanks for listening. Go to sportsinquirer.net for all the news and notes in the world of sports. You know our social media and our audio and video hosts by now. Just search Sports Inquirer and you'll see everything that we have going on. Until next time, good fight, good night, and be safe.